Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus, but the Pharisees and the scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So to them he addressed this parable. "What man among you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, would not leave the 99 in the desert and go after the lost one until he finds it? And when he does find it, he sets it on his shoulders with great joy, and upon his arrival home, he calls together his friends and neighbors and says to them, 'Rejoice with me, because I have found my lost sheep.' I tell you, in just the same way, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who have no need of repentance. Or what woman, having 10 coins and losing one, would not light a lamp and sweep the house, searching carefully until she finds it? When she does find it, she calls together her friends and neighbors and says to them, 'Rejoice with me, because I have found the coin that I lost.' In just the same way, I tell you, there will be rejoicing among the angels of God over one sinner who repents." Then he said, "A man had 2 sons, and the younger son said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of your estate that should come to me.' So the father divided the property between them. After a few days, the younger son collected all his belongings and set off to a distant country, where he squandered his inheritance on a life of dissipation. When he had freely spent everything, a severe famine struck that country, and he found himself in dire need. So he hired himself out to one of the local citizens, who sent him to his farm to tend the swine. And he longed to eat his fill of the pods on which the swine fed, but nobody gave him any. Coming to his senses, he thought, 'How many of my father's hired workers have more than enough food to eat, but here I am, dying from hunger. I shall get up and go to my father, and I shall say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Treat me as you would treat one of your hired workers.' So he got up and he went back to his father. While he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son.' But his father ordered his servants, 'Quickly, bring the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fattened calf and slaughter it. Then let us celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.' Then the celebration began. Now the older son had been out in the field, and on his way back, as he neared the house, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked what might this mean. The servant said to him, 'Your brother has returned, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf, because he has him back safe and sound.' He became angry. And when he refused to enter the house, his father came out and pleaded with him. He said to his father in reply, 'Look, all these years I served you, and not once did I disobey your orders, yet you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends. But when your son returns, you swallowed up your property with prostitutes. For him you slaughter the fattened calf.' He said to him, 'My son, you are here with me always. Everything I have is yours. But now we must celebrate and rejoice, because your brother was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.'" The Gospel of the Lord. So Father Burke hasn't been kicked off YouTube yet, but he gave me his tape recorder to record my homily, so it should be imminent any time. Today's gospel is one that I've delivered many talks on over the years, and yet for as many times as I've talked about this gospel and even preached on this gospel, every time I'm called to address its underlying issue and its nature and its meaning, something new strikes me, and it's no different today. This is by no means the talk or the homily that I've often given on this. I don't even think I've repeated any themes on it. Actually, as I was reading this gospel, I had been reading some quotes from St. Catherine of Siena, and it's interesting because this particular gospel, I couldn't help be reminded of her quote when she asserts this question. She addresses God as, "O mad lover, you have such need of your creature. It seems to me, for you act as if you could not live without her in spite of the fact that you are life itself. And everything has life from you, and nothing can have life without you." And she asks, "Why then are you so mad?" And then the saint answers her own question by stating, "Because you have fallen in love with what you have made." And that's really the entirety of the gospel today. In these three parables, Jesus reveals the essential quality of God to us. He has fallen in love with what he has made. Now, if we're placed side by side with the strength and the power and the love of God, we're pretty small. We don't really hold a candle to him in comparative value. And yet, he pursues us. In spite of the fact that everything that lives comes from him, and that nothing can live without him, in spite of his power, in spite of the glory given to him by the angels on high, he is madly in love with his creation. Us, mankind. It's the central theme today. Now, as we make our way through this, I want you to observe the progression in today's gospel. Jesus draws us ever nearer to those things we hold dear, almost kind of in an orderly way. Each time he's positing the question, who would not? Who would not leave the 99 sheep? Who would not light the lamp and sweep the house for one coin? Well, here's the answer. We would not. So let's begin with the first parable. Jesus asks, "Who among you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, would not leave the 99 and go after the lost one until he finds it?" I mean, would you? Now think about it. You're a shepherd. You got 100 sheep. You're out in the desert wilderness. Some half-brained sheep wanders off into the wild somewhere. Could take you days to find it. And it's dangerous out there. I mean, it's dangerous for the sheep, but it's dangerous for you too. You go looking out there. I mean, there could be anything out there. Would you really go after it? I mean, of course not. You've got 99 left, right? We're going to play the game of numbers, the law of averages, maybe. I mean, you're going to figure, well, I guess let that sheep fend for itself. It left the safety of the fold, the oversight and protection of the shepherd. It left the richness of the pasture and the clearness of the water. It made its choice, and it deserves what it gets. And yet Jesus reminds us that the sheep are God's flock. And if one sinner of that flock repents, there will be more joy in heaven over that one sheep than over the 99. So let's put this in today's context, okay? Because we're not all out there Monday through Friday shepherding, per se. So maybe the wool of the sheep represents clothing. Someone has 100 pairs of socks, right? If I had 100 pairs of socks, and I lose one sock, would I wholly devote myself to finding that sock? Well, probably not. Can you imagine if I spent days or weeks doing nothing but looking for a single sock? And then when I find it, I call all my friends and all my neighbors, and I say, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my lost sock." you all would say, yeah. And you've lost something else, Deacon Dave. But one lost sheep, God will seek it out. Next, Jesus asks, what woman having 10 coins and losing one would not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? So think about this for a minute. One measly coin. Right, so say it's a dime. You have $1 and you lose a dime. Who cares? It's just a dime. I mean, when's the last time you turned on every light and you swept the house and you turned it upside down so you could find the dime? Your friends are calling you and saying, hey, let's go see the new Jaws 3D movie. And you say, nah, I can't. I have got to look for this dime. None of us would do that. We just say, forget about it. It's worthless. It doesn't deserve that much time or effort to go and seek it out. And yet Jesus tells us that every coin has great value in the eyes of God. We are the gold of his treasury, and should one coin be diminished by sin, there will be rejoicing among the angels of God over the one who repents and returns. So note this progression and the value of the subject of Jesus' parables. We've now moved from the sheep, who represent clothing maybe. Now we've moved, it's relatively low value. Then we've moved to money, which draws our attention a little bit more. Well, maybe, okay. I mean, what would I rather have, a pile of socks or a pile of money? I'd rather have the pile of money. But still, spend all that time looking for a dime? Probably not. But the one lost coin, God will seek it out. Now we move on to the story of the prodigal son. We're all familiar with this parable. It's one of the most famous of Jesus' parables. And like I said, I've given many, many talks on it, and I've heard many more talks than I can count. But here's the core of it. Here's a child, clearly an ungrateful child, because he can't even wait until his father dies before he asks for his inheritance. I love how he squeezes 2 me's into that one single short sentence. Give me the inheritance that is mine. Give to me the inheritance that belongs to me. This is us, folks. I mean, it illustrates how God offers us this fortune of salvation, this life everlasting with him in relationship for eternity. And yet, we're focused on the material gifts of this world, and we leave our loving Father behind in thought and in word and even in deeds. Put him behind us. In such a state, we, like the sheep and the coin, are lost. And when this son ultimately finds himself in this state of wretched poverty, working among the swine, which for a Jewish person at the time was the lowest of the low, he's destitute. What happens? He longs again. He longs for the safety and the comfort and the love that he knows his father can give him. Yet he feels like he doesn't deserve it, because he tells his father, treat me as you would one of your slaves. And what do we read? This is the interesting part. This is what struck me yesterday. The gospel says that when he was still a long way off, this is the son, when he was still a long way off, the father caught sight of him. Now think about it. What do we find the father doing? He's obviously out there looking for the wayward son. Keep in mind, it says he was still a long way off and the father saw him. In those days, a long way off, generally speaking, was more than a day's travel from home. Which means the father wasn't standing on the porch, sipping sun tea, and waiting for his son to arrive, come down the driveway. He's out there looking for him. And this is a man of likely some level of nobility, or at least in the patriarchy. They used to have a saying that the robe of the patriarch shall not flow, meaning he sits there. People come to him, he doesn't go to them. But we look at this and it says they were still a long way off. So you have to keep in mind that he's out there. He's looking for him. He's looking for us. See the progression now? Throughout these Gospels the last few weeks, God answers questions about, or Jesus answers questions about, how can we be more like God? Right? Teach us to pray like him. Pick up your cross, follow me. So in this parable, we're drawn into the way that God thinks. If not with the sheep, if not with the coin, here. In this parable, he asks a question, who among you would not go looking? Now, if you're a parent, and one of your children runs away, or one of your children is lost, would you not depart from your children who remain at home to try to find that lost child? Would you not? Absolutely. Now we're starting to see things as God sees it. They're not a sock or a dime. They're not clothing. They're not money. They're not sheep. They're not coins. They are our child. And that is exactly how God thinks. He has millions of faithful followers throughout the world. They're devout. They know the safety and the love and the salvation that he gives them among his flock or his treasury, which is the church. But how is God using his church? He's not just standing there over it. He's using it to look for and to find the one lost sheep, the one lost coin, the one lost child. So go out there. Don't take your inheritance for granted just because you're sitting here today and receiving the sacraments and you're living your faith. Don't say, well, let that sheep fend for itself. It left the safety of the fold. It left the church. Well, I guess it deserves what it gets. Be like God as a parent who is madly in love with his child. Search for the wife, search for the husband, search for the mother, the father, the son, the daughter, the friend, the brother, the sister, the man, the woman. Search for the one who has wandered away and is lost. This is your call to ministry. Don't be like the good son who sees the gifts that the father showers on the lost one who's returned and says, well, what about me? I've been here the whole time. When you know your father's child is lost, search for them as God would, knowing that you are with him always, and that all that he has it's already yours. And if you're sitting here today and you feel like you're lost, or that God could not possibly love you after the life you've lived, well, know this. God is always seeking you out. He will always be looking for you. And if in your heart, like the prodigal son, you wish to be found, you will be found. Remember, he is madly in love with each and every one of us, including you. And he is always searching. May you always know the love that our Lord has for you.